Hi, I am Tony Russo, and this is In Case You Missed It from Kates-Boylston for the week ending Friday, October 17th, 2025. Great stuff coming up in the October 23 issue of Funeral Service Insider. We have a discussion with the program director from Godwin University, who's going to talk about that school's decision to offer an online option. And we're also speaking with some of the folks at Garfield Refining, about recycling, which they'll be doing a webinar and virtual event with us in November. So we wanted to talk to them a little bit about that. And that is in the Funeral Service Insider edition that's coming out. But for this week, we've got plenty of fun news to go over, including lots from our friends in Texas. And we'll get to all of that after these words from our friends and sponsors at Matthews Aurora.
For more than 20 years, Matthews Aurora Funeral Solutions has been providing innovative technology to support funeral professionals and their families. Their Arranger presentation system makes showcasing service and merchandise options simple. Family Connections technology enables families to participate in arrangement planning from the comfort of home. And the Advisor system combines case management and interactive planning, all in one place. Simplify the arrangement process with technology designed for you. Visit MatthewsAurora.com for a free demo or call 1-800-457-111 today. That's MatthewsAurora.com or 1-800-457-1111. Call today.
First up, I want to mention a story that I saw in my local paper. It was on DelawareOnline.com, which is essentially the USA Today version for all of Delaware. It's the same, newspaper company. But I've seen stories like this. I see them all the time, 2 or 3 a week. And this headline is, what is a death doula and what does it mean to have one on your side? And there are all sorts of stories like this with these different variations. And, as we talk more about how funeral service is changing and as there is more attention paid to the value, I guess, of death doulas in funeral service, it's also worth mentioning that I rarely see what does a funeral director do and what does it mean to have one on your side. And there's no reason that there aren't stories like this. I mean, these are stories, there was another, we talked a couple of weeks ago, probably more than a month ago, about these newspaper columns, these Ask a Director newspaper columns. Those are, I think, really, really valuable ways to connect with the community, because I think that the reason local media outlets don't necessarily write what is a funeral director stories is because they don't know that they don't know the answer to that question. As being a funeral director changes, I think it's important to let the community know in the best ways that you can. And, I know that we do all sorts of outreach, or at least I do stories on all of the outreach that funeral homes do. And we're going to have a couple of stories this week about what funeral directors do and how they get the word out. But it's something worth considering, at least looking for the opportunity to explain what a funeral director does now. This is not the funeral director that you last dealt with. If you are, under 50, certainly you've probably, hopefully, I guess, you've not dealt with a funeral director in the recent past. And that's in a changing atmosphere. That's something that can be corrected. So it's something that I'd like you guys to at least think about. I figured, as I said, we got a little conversation going on social media about it, but I would love your feedback on this channel as well to let me know what you guys do or what has worked for you, if anything has worked for you, and letting people know what funeral directors do today, not what they did in the movies or not what they did when you were a kid growing up and you went to your first grandparent funeral or anything. So anyway, that's a topic worth considering, and I thought I'd share it. So speaking of getting your name out there, there is a story that I shared from Spearfish, South Dakota, and I have a special affinity for Spearfish. I take an annual cross-country trip, or have been taking annual cross-country trips, and Spearfish is one of our day trippy stops. It's most of the way to our destination, and it's a cool little town. So what caught my attention was Spearfish in the headline, and this is about the Kincaid Funeral Home, and the story is mostly about the charity that the Kincaid Funeral Home works with, and it is a veterinarian's charity that provides money for people who want to have their animals seen by a vet but can't afford it, I guess, is the best way to put it. And that's not only the hook for the story, that is why people are reading it. And as kind of throwaway part of the story, almost just a mention, they say that the Kincaid made this significant donation. I think it was $10,000 donation with money that they got from their recycling company. And it was funny because I read this story, and then of course I interviewed the folks from Garfield who are, as I said, featured in the October 23rd edition of Funeral Service Insider, the newsletter. This company, Kincaid, happens to partner with Core Scientific for their recycling, but the real opportunity, and there's no way to say it without sounding mercenary, except it's not mercenary, you're just letting people know what you're doing, is saying, yes, this is part of what funeral directors do. We are responsible to make sure that anything that is left over from a cremation is responsibly recycled, and it's better for the environment, and it is better for everyone. And then we take your loved one's share. We take what's left over from all of it, and then we give it to a worthwhile cause in town. And it doesn't have to be you handing over a great big check if you're, kind of shy about that thing, but it's an opportunity for you to help bring more attention to a charity that you already like, and to also say, this is one of the things that funeral directors do. And it's not, it's not one of the top 5 things that people would guess about funeral directors. So it was a well-timed story about an important topic. And again, we are having a webinar. It is on November 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and there'll be a link in the show notes to sign up for that if you care to come. And one of the things I spoke with the Garfield refining people about was, having meetings and choosing the people who do your recycling very specifically. And anyway, that's in the other story. But this story I thought I would share, and kudos to the folks over there at Kincaid Funeral Home. And hello in Spearfish. I'll be back in hopefully another 6 to 8 months. I've mentioned before that there seems to be more funeral coverage in the UK than funeral industry coverage in consumer media than there is here. And this is a story that just was well timed, and I wanted to talk about the language of it. It is M.A. Mills, which is one of the larger, I think, funeral companies around there, invests in inclusive funeral training to provide peace of mind. And I love the way that was put, and that's why I wanted to use it to kind of kickstart this discussion. It's something that we've gone over, again and again in Funeral Service Insider and in this podcast. The idea that people who are members of, sexual and gender minorities may tend to assume that they may not be welcome in some places, and just putting people's mind at ease, just giving people the peace of mind to understand that they'll be treated with respect and dignity, which is such a weird thing to have to say, but there are monsters out there, and what are you going to do about them? So it's something that is worth noting. Just this story in the paper about a local training where, it's a signal to the community that you are open and not aggressively bigoted as people can be when it comes to sexual and gender minorities for some reason. And along those lines, I would like to remind you that our friends and former guests on the show, Sarah Murphy and Tim McClune, will be helping to host the 5th annual Death Care Proud event on Tuesday, November 28th in Chicago at Charlie's Chicago in Chicago, Illinois, in case you were curious which Chicago I was talking about. This is an event that has only grown and has only improved. And I'll have a link in the show notes and next to this post online where you can hear their interview from last year, because I did a preview story on Death Care Proud for 2024. And 2025, it seems, has only gotten bigger and more exciting. And we have a couple different stories out of Texas again this week, and they are Texas Funeral Service Commission related. And the first one that I want to talk about is really convoluted, and I recommend that if you need to have all the details in front of you, that you search for Adeline Buie online, and that is Adeline, capital Bui. She was the owner of a company that did cremations, among other things, Capital Mortuary Service. And you may remember this story broke back in March, I think, or April. She was accused of, quote, experimenting, unquote, on body parts that had come into her mortuary. And so the short version is someone that had worked for her and was no longer working for her reported that she was forging their name for getting death certificates. And that was problem number one. Problem number two is that she was doing these, quote, experiments, unquote. The reason I keep saying quote and unquote when it comes to experiments is because the other person who ended up being arrested ran a company called Med to Market in South. This is all in Austin. And that's a body parts company. And they denied the accusation that these were experiments and said that they were not directly involved in ordering them. But they were also accused of perjury because they said that they only used licensed body facilities to process their non-experiments that figured out what happened to body parts embalmed in certain ways over time. The case has been dragging on and on since April with lots of lewd and disappointing facts or accusations, I guess, that have come out of it. But all of the charges were dropped this week because you can't begin a criminal investigation if an administrative investigation is underway. And since the Texas Funeral Service Commission didn't begin its investigation and didn't hand over the findings of its investigation for the police to then begin a criminal investigation, many of the charges have been voided. And it's important to say that right in the beginning, Mrs. Bowie's attorney, whose name is Jessica Huynh, Huyhn, has maintained that since this has to do with body parts and since the word experiments got out there, this looks a lot worse than it is. And she said once all the facts are out, that this won't be an issue anymore. And the fact that, adding to that, the fact that this case has been dropped, I guess we'll have to see. The forgery case is still proceeding, so there may be more information. And there's a ton of backstory that goes with this. So we'll see. And of course, body part stealing is going to be another issue that we'll be tackling going forward. But anyway, there is a link to everything that I have so far in the show notes. Speaking of stories that you may want to look up to see the incredible breadth, you can just look up the East Plano Islamic Center, also called EPIC. It is a mosque and burial ground, but it is also a city. The city part of it, I guess it'll probably be more like a homeowners association, one of these planned communities. They're very popular here in Maryland where I am, but I know that planned communities in general are on the rise, and this is one of them. But aside from that, what we're going to talk about here is the burial practices. So I reported last year, I think maybe in 2023 or in 2024, about a similar problem that was going on in Minnesota, where people who are Muslim people have different burial rites. This baffles some funeral boards, and they just because of the funeral rites, oftentimes what the Muslim practice is conflated with what Christian practice is, or Christian, I guess, rules require. Most of our funeral rules are based on the idea of a Christian ceremony, and that's where Muslims sometimes run up against the perceptions of what a funeral home should do versus what a church, what a place of worship should do. And the Texas Funeral Service Commission has been trying to prevent the East Plano Islamic Center from burying their dead themselves because they don't like the way that they do it. And that is just not one of my little snotty off the cuff remarks. That is among the things that are in the messages between the former executive director, Scott Bingaman. I don't know how many executive directors back he was, honestly, at this point, and the chair, Kristen Tips. This week, actually on October 9th, the East Plano Islamic Center, EPIC, filed suit against the Texas Funeral Services Commission, Texas Funeral Service Commission's executive director in their official capacity, and against Kristen Tips in her individual capacity. And their lists of problems that they have, I guess, with Ms. Tips and with the Funeral Service Commission is extensive. And the evidence that they provide, including we reported on a couple weeks ago, text messages between Bingham and Tips about the relative merits of Islam as a metaphysical ideology as opposed to Christianity as a metaphysical ideology. And it's not pretty. I mean, it's all the bigotry is always boring to me, and it never holds up well. So we'll see how this goes. I don't know if it'll have any effect at all. Increasingly denying that you're doing anything wrong works, whether you're doing anything wrong or not, in this kind of kooky time we've entered. So we'll see what turns up. I just got my hands on this suit, so I'm going to take another week or so to pull it apart and see what other fun stories are in it. But all of the basics make me look forward to hearing the Texas Funeral Commission's response, and of course hearing Ms. Tips's response as well would be something. So we're looking forward to all of that. There is not a link to this in the show notes. You have to look up the court thing, and it's a pain in the neck. So as this comes into more of the news, I'll provide the coverage. I'll provide links to the coverage. But for now, keep your eyes on it, because there's certainly going to be more out on this continuing battle over both the funerary rights of Muslims and the literal rights of them to build a city where they are safe from persecution. So link to the epic stuff in the show notes as best as I can provide it. And that will do me for this week. In case you missed it, From Kates-Boylston is a Kates-Boylston production. It was written and edited and videoed by me, Tony Russo. Please subscribe wherever you're listening now. And if you have any feedback, I would love to have it. You can go to the show notes and then click on my email address and then send me an email, to which I will respond. I do appreciate those of you who are reaching out to me with stories. You are so much better than Google, so thank you for all of your help with helping me find stories that are worth telling. And we will check in with you next time.